Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. This is Joseph, and I'm here with my co-host, Mary. Mary, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm always doing quite wonderful when I'm visiting with you, and we always have amazing guests. So that just boosted up to a whole another level.
Well, you're way too kind. Why don't we just jump in and introduce today's guest?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph. Today, we're excited to have Tanya MFK, a dynamic figure in the world of personal and professional development. With a background in neuroscience, Tanya has worked with Fortune 500 companies and coached successful individuals to craft their ideal lives. Her expertise spans resilience, transformation, and designing lives we love to live now instead of magically someday in the future. Tanya, welcome to the Prime Life Podcast. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your name, because we have to ask that.
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. So Tanya MFK, you could also go by Tanya Marie Figueres Kreisinger, but we have learned that that is very difficult to say and very hard to spell. So Tanya MFK made its way much more simpler. So that's what we're doing. And I'm excited today. We're going to talk about how do we really design our best lives. I think the idea conceptually is out there and so lovely, but how do we make it real and tangible? So I'm excited to dive in.
Awesome. Great to have you as well. I have to start with the neuroscience. I'm a bit of a neuroscience fan. I've taken some online courses. I am by far away from being smart in this subject, but let's talk a little bit about it. Let's talk about neuroscience, what it means to you, maybe define it a little bit, and we can talk about how it impacts, aging as we get older.
Absolutely. So any of you are going, whoa, this might be too much. We're going to make this simplified and tangible. Neuroscience in its simplest of form is the science of the brain. How does our brain work? And as many of us know, the brain is running a big part of how we show up, act, and process our emotions, our feelings, our motivation, our energy. All of those things combine to process how we step out into the world. And that goes with how we feel about it, what our energy is like when we step out to do things, and how likely we are to hit those new goals in our life in this new phase. And so neuroscience is a wonderful place to anchor us into not just our feelings and emotions and how we're looking at things, but how we can use our biology of how our body works to get to where we want to go. And sometimes that might just mean taking out the trash, and someone, it might be writing that first book or something else. So that's the easiest way I would say to play with neuroscience. We're just learning how your brain works and how you can use that knowledge. Because we don't need to be scientists. We don't need to know all the details. But if we understand how it shows up in our daily lives, then we can harness it and almost hack it to make ourselves do the things we really want to do.
So that is very enticing to hear how we can hack it. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. Because I'm really excited about what you're going to say, and I'm very interested because I think folks out there would want to know that. So please share how that works.
Well, so one of the things that starts out that's kind of helpful to grasp is something that might sound a little wild at first, but it's quite simple. So we're going to talk about neuroplasticity. Okay, neuroplasticity. And all that means is that we have the ability to actually train our brain to create the habits and reactions that we want. So let's think about it like this. Our brains, as much as we like to think of them as a supercomputer, they're actually quite lazy. And in fact, their goal is how to be the ultimate slacker. And they do that by saying, how can I not have to think about this process? So if any of us have a habit, I'm from California. So some of my unfortunate habits is probably getting a little frustrated in traffic. Okay. Driving in traffic, you might say, you know what? I want to be calm and enjoy it. But then that guy cuts you off. And next thing you know, you're muttering under your butt, right? And you go, you know what? I don't want to do that. But here's the thing. You've done it enough times that your brain said, you know what? We keep talking to each other. So we have these neurons in our brain that are kind of like, they're not next door neighbors. There's a space in the middle. And they keep shouting to say, hey, when you get cut off, make sure to mumble under your breath. And we keep shouting it and shouting it. And eventually they say, you know what? Why don't we just put a phone between us? Let's put a little bridge to make it easier. We don't have to shout to each other anymore. And then as time goes on, it says, you know, why don't we enclose that bridge? Why don't we make it our own little tunnel? And little by little, they actually start to become neighbors. They become the same house. And now they don't have to shout anymore. In fact, they don't even have to think about it anymore. And that's when we know we've solidified a habit. So as much as you mentally may say, I don't want to react when I'm frustrated in traffic, your brain has solidified a super highway that says, no, we don't even have to think about it. Guy cuts us off, we're upset. That's what we do. So then we try to say, well, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, it doesn't happen that way. We have to create a new super highway. We have to create a new habit. So what we need to do is actually practice the habit we want. We have to practice a thing. So we have to say, instead of going, I don't want to mutter in traffic and be upset, we have to think, what do I want to do instead? And the more that we practice that, we actually can create a new superhighway. So the old one starts to fall apart. We're no longer neighbors. We've created a new superhighway that says every time we get cut off, we take a deep breath and smile. And then more and more we do that, it becomes an automatic reaction. That is what neuroplasticity does. It is your ability to actually train your brain to do the reactions you want, to have the habits you want. But it requires practice. It requires continually putting it into play. So your brain goes, oh, you know what? Every time I wake up, I do 5 push-ups. And we start to we don't even think about it. And that's the power of neuroplasticity. And when we recognize that we have the power to influence how our brain works for us, then we can start deciding, what do we want it to do? So that helps. Kind of the first part, I guess, of what we're talking about in neuroplasticity. So now that's kind of the big part, like neuroplasticity. Oh, what big deal? Because our brains are always changing. We think, can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's hogwash, guys. Okay. We can absolutely continually learn new tricks, but we have to choose to train our brain. Now, here's a really kind of cool part about that. We don't actually always have to do the work. So a really neat thing about how our brain works is that it doesn't know the difference between things that are real or imagined. So think about this. If you've ever watched a movie, you know it's a movie. We're grown-ups. We understand how it works. But we get scared. We can allow the music creeps in. We're like, and we're holding on to our blankets like, oh no, the bad guy's back there. Our heart is beating. We have a biological response to how our brain is working, to our thoughts. We think it's scary. Our body has a physical response to that. We know it's not real, but our body reacts to that. So we need to understand that we can do that in many other spaces. So if we are able to, for example, say, I want to get up and go for a walk every morning. That's the new habit I want to do. So what happens is we set our alarm and we get up and we go, we're going to get up. We get up to go, and we go, oh, I'm feeling groggy. I don't want to get up. And we might snooze and we lay back in bed. And we keep doing that. We keep doing that. So what did we do? What did we just learn? We're creating a habit with our neuroplasticity to say every time the alarm goes off, we get right back in bed. Brain made it easy for us. Now we want to change it. So what we can actually do is we can visualize it. We can visualize it and see ourselves waking up. So I'm closing my eyes right now. See ourselves waking up, see ourselves wanting to push that snooze button, and then visualize ourselves doing the thing we want to do. So this is what happens is the body doesn't know, or the brain doesn't know that we didn't actually do it. The brain goes, oh, I see this new habit. That's what we do. And if we keep visualizing that enough, the brain will start to create that habit even though you haven't actually done it yet. Now, I do suggest doing both, trying to do the habit and visualizing it. But to understand this actual biological response to our thoughts, to our visualization, is incredibly powerful. So if anyone's looking at this and going, oh, this sounds kind of weird, you're using your visualization more than you realize to create responses. It's just, we're not using that well. We usually use it in worry or in fear. We know how to imagine the worst case scenario. And you know what? We have a physical response to that, don't we? But if we do the same thing for the things we want to do in life, whether it's habits, whether it's reactions, whether it's how we show up, we can rehearse that enough in our mind and show our brain to actually create that connection to that new habit. And so just using something like that is an incredibly easy way if you're struggling to kind of figure out this new path of what you want to do, or you're wanting to start a new regimen. Too often when we think about visualization, people are telling you to visualize the end result. Visualize yourself taking that walk. I say, go back and visualize the hard part. Visualize getting up and feeling grumpy, and that even though you felt grumpy, you grabbed the keys and you put on the shoes and you got outside. Because if we visualize the end result, then we get all the dopamine, happy feelings of the end result. And our brain goes, cool, we know how good it feels to already do it. But our brain doesn't know how good it feels to go through the muck to get to the thing we want to do. And that's where we can really hack our brain to really create the habits that we want.
So you shared a lot just now. So going back a few minutes, if you're creating a super highway, you don't even have to get stuck in traffic. Let's just be clear.
Right.
So,
that's exactly it.
You talked about visualization. You talked about neuroplasticity. Maybe, address, as people age, your bodies change. Does your brain change in the same way? And is it ever too late to create new pathways and tunnels as you describe them?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Coverite is the first digital concierge health insurance platform focused on Medicare. Their mission is to make Medicare more transparent and accessible for America's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. By simplifying a traditionally confusing and complex decision, Coverite delivers a simple, seamless, and hassle-free plan selection and enrollment experience. Try the Coverite platform and see for yourself why they've been referred to as the TurboTax for Medicare. Visit coverite.com/podcast to learn more.
Absolutely. So those pathways and tunnels, again, right? That is the super highways that we're able to create. And there is no age bound for that neuroplasticity. There is absolutely no limit to when that stops. Now, if we're not actively engaging in things that will create new superhighways, then you've created all there is to create. Not because you can't, but because you haven't engaged in anything to create a new one. So for example, in neuroscience, one of the fun examples they like to give is of the taxi drivers in London. So if you've not been in London, I think the driving is pretty wild. And to get around and which street ends here and goes upside down or under there, it's very, very complicated. And as a taxi driver, you need a happy person who you're driving around, not someone who's going, why'd you go this way? So they memorize a map that is just mind-boggling to any normal human being, okay? And what happens is we've actually been able to see the growth of neuroplasticity and connections in the regions of the brain that manage this space. So that's amazing. We go, wow, when you do this, it really creates. The other part of that is when they're no longer taxi drivers, those superhighways fade away. They're no longer there. So it's not a one and done. It is an ongoing thing. So that growth is directly related to the things that we choose to engage ourselves in. So a lot of times we think these, it's the memory games or these kind of things we have to do. It can help. It's not really the thing. And in neuroscience, they've been somewhat kind of dismissed. They're not a detriment, but what's more helpful is actually the things you like to do. If you've always been interested in taking a language, that's the great thing. Reading a new book, meeting new people, those fire up different highways that will start to connect and make these things habits and allow to the continuation of brain health and that neuroplasticity. So we have healthy brains, and that alone, not focusing on just, oh, I got to make sure I have a memory, but just the exercise of the brain alone keeps our memory and our vitality.
So I'm going to jump in real quick before Mary goes. There are products now on the market claiming to improve neuroplasticity and claiming to improve memory and all these wonderful claims. Bogus? Truth? Somewhere in the middle?
So here's the thing, right? When we talk, there is a concept in this about brain health and the lifestyle for brain health. Right. So there are things that help us in terms of how well we sleep and certain things that we're eating. So it's easy for people to kind of take those elements and put them into supplement form and say, these help. They could, but you know what? Having it in your actual food form, actually getting sleep, those things will be not just as effective, but actually more effective. So I'm not going to knock that. If you're not doing anything, why not have a little bit there? But really, it can be as simple as just adjusting your lifestyle that is focused on brain health, right? Having a variety of foods. You know, if you've been kind of stuck in your regimens or systems, like this is kind of what I have for breakfast, this is what I have for lunch, expanding that to some of the more antioxidant rich foods and things like that. All those simple things that we've all kind of heard for years, right? But doing them intentionally will actually have that same amount. It's probably going to be a little more tasty and a little more fun than another pill to add to the list there.
So this sounds like regular exercise, like it's a journey, not a destination. And as you said earlier, like it's not a one and done. So you have to be vigilant. You have to make decisions about what you want to do. But I'm really interested too so you've shared quite a bit and I love all of it. And I know what you do for a living, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because how do you utilize this neuroscience background to help individuals, like in my introduction to you, change their life or transform their life now versus waiting? And then I just want to make one more comment, which is when you were talking about the superhighway, all I'm thinking of, going back to the days of, you know, the sciences, like I'm seeing all these neurons and these axons and these dendrites, you know, kind of synapsing. And anyway, sorry, I was being a little silly there. But if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think people would be very interested to know how you utilize that in your practice.
Absolutely. So it's great to kind of understand how the brain works, and as she was explaining, you know, the synapses and all those things, and how we start to connect them and create the myelin sheath, and all that's fun to know. But how do we harness this for our betterment? It's fascinating, but we need to go, how can we use this to create the habits that we want, and ideally habits that serve us serve our goals, whatever they may be, in the life that we're looking to design at this point in our life. And we can use this to harness really and create habits of focus, habits of confidence, habits of creating skills. And so we help clients kind of understand how to train our brain to help us do the things we want. And so a couple of practices that we play with is creating a habit of thoughts that serve you, right? So sometimes our motivation alone is the mindset that we come to things with. So creating a habit of thoughts that serve you can be something as simple as affirmations. Now, before any of you roll your eyes, because affirmations got a lot of affirmations, I'll tell you the trick that why affirmations in this way work and the other ones seem to kind of fall off. Typically, affirmations show up in something like, I am a multimillionaire. And here's the thing. If you're not a multimillionaire, you know that. And your brain goes, I'm calling BS on that. I'm sorry. I'm saying that's not the case, okay? And so it doesn't work for us. So what's important, should you choose this method of affirmations, is actually to say statements that are true, statements you can believe. So a statement that you could believe is, I can be a millionaire. Now that is true, right? I can get to the gym. I can go for a walk. I am a person that can go for walks. That is an affirmation that is starting to train our brain into that belief. There is a reward system happening. It's not falling on deaf ears. One of the jokes we make is be careful what you say because your mind's always listening. And so we can use that to our benefit for that same reason, right? So affirmations are one thing if you use it in a way of something that you can believe. We can also create a habit of focus. So if any of us are moving into ventures that are new, a lot of new things that we can explore at this times in our life, then being able to focus on the thing and stick with it can be really tough. So understanding that our focus only lasts for a certain amount of time. So any of us who were kind of forced to study for hours at a time, oh, it's so tough. Well, not only wasn't you. It was your brain. Your brain goes, I can't do anything more than 45 minutes. And 45 minutes is the top end. Typically for people, it's about 25 minutes. So instead of pushing ourselves, come on, push. We don't want to push. Let's go with ease. Learn to create 25-minute vignettes of your focus. Hey, I'm going to read that book for 25 minutes. I'm going to try my language course for 25 minutes. And then give yourself the moment to step away and break. Work with the way your brain works. Instead of forcing focus out of something with how we don't work, we can create focus by using that. I already explained kind of visualization with a reaction and things like that. Now, there's another interesting space in this, and you guys jump in and grab me at any time, because if you learned anything so far, everyone, I can talk, right? So the other thing that's very interesting here is motivation can be a big issue, right? For all of us, right? And any stage in our life, motivation. And so we kind of try to rah ourselves into movement. I gotta feel it. I gotta do it. So we're going to go a little sciencey just for a moment here. We'll bring it back. We have two modes in our brain. We have the default mode network. Okay. You have to remember it. It's a default. Just remember default, right? The default mode network, the DMN. And then we have the central executive network, the CEN. Work only happens in the central executive network. You cannot be in activity in the default mode network. Well, why is that? Well, the default mode network is just that. The default network is when we're daydreaming, we're thinking. It's a very important network. It's a very important mode of the brain. When the brain is in default mode, it's it takes over and it says, we're spacing out, we're thinking. These are where ideas come, we're reflecting, we're planning. It's the I'm over there kind of mode. The central executive network, this is when we're on fire. We're in the zone. We're ready to get it done. We're going to clean the house. We're going to go through those files, whatever it might be. It's the present right here mode. Now, the trick to understand is that you cannot be in both networks at once. You're either over there in your brain's default mode, or you're right here in the central executive. Can't be in two places or functions at the same time. So here's the thing. If you want work done, you need to be in that central executive network, which means you can't get into action by thinking about it. Because if you're thinking about it, you're in the default mode network. So you have to act, you have to move. And that's what gets you into the zone of the central executive network. So if you're feeling stuck and you're trying to find motivation, get up, sit at the desk you're supposed to sit at, pull the book. Even if you don't feel motivated, just pick it up, whatever the thing is. And that will start to fire up the action part of your brain. We cannot feel our way into action, but we can act our way into feeling motivated.
So I stand at my desk to stay active. Right?
Yes.
You said a lot. There's a lot going on. We're in the active mode network here right now.
We're in the central executive network right now.
Definitely in that central executive network for sure.
Yeah.
As you were talking earlier about like thinking, you can't think your way to action and whatnot. The idea of the inner voice came up, and I'm just curious, does the inner voice, can it create habits unknowingly? Like you keep telling yourself, whatever negative talk you're talking, is that going to create negative pathways?
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Yeah. So anything that we do often, again, like I said, the brain is lazy. So I want to say lazy, but it's going, how can I make this effortless? I don't want to have to think about all these things. So if we are telling ourselves one thing, like I want to, let's go. I want to get up and go for a walk every morning, right? We keep telling ourselves, but when the time happens, we get up and we press the snooze button. That inside voice is picking up and going, okay, what we actually want to do is the snooze button. We do not mean what we say. We're training it to say, I may think one way, but we do another. And those subtle little conversations, like you're talking about kind of the inner voice or even the interactions, those things are changing the actual habits, the connections that are happening in our brain. So we're thinking one thing, but we're creating an alternative habit. We're creating an alternative reaction, even though we're saying the opposite. So the more and more we keep pressing that snooze button or whatever the vice might be for anyone here, we keep eating that chocolate, we're saying it, but we're showing and teaching our brain, our body, and our subconscious. Now, our subconscious is a real thing there that's happening, and it's picking up all those cues. And I'll give this one example just to simplify it real quick. Most of us don't remember learning how to walk. We don't remember learning how to talk. And most of our parents didn't sit down and say, this is how you walk and this is how you talk. We observed it. All this information we absorbed. You may know where stores are located in your town, but you didn't study a map of the town. All that information just says, oh, that's, Tom's Hardware on the corner. You didn't study your city. It absorbs as you keep showing up and doing it, as knowledge, as things that where you act from. Now you walk, now you talk. This is how you learn. So the same thing is happening every day, all the way through all of our ages. Again, we may think we're stuck in our ways, but it's mainly because we're bringing the same story every day to confirm that. And as soon as we change that, we can change the outcome.
So I was thinking, because you kept bringing up the going for a walk. So I think that was perfect for me, because I was thinking, like, for myself, and I'm just bringing this up, not that it's all about me, but when I get up every day and I'm a morning exerciser, I absolutely know if I think about it, I'm not going to do it. Like, I don't even give myself that much time to think about it, and I have a system, because I love how I feel after. Do I want to do it, especially when it's cold, like this morning?
Right.
Absolutely not, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just too cold. But I have to get out in the fresh air and I have to do it because I know I'm going to feel better when I'm done. But for those individuals that may know they're going to feel better from whatever it is that they're trying to set up the new pathways, as you mentioned, and I know you were very articulate in explaining how it all works, but what are a couple of things that they can really latch onto that would be helpful instead of saying, well, I know I'm going to feel better, but I'm not really too sure about that. Like, again,
Yeah.
it kind of connects with Joseph's comment about that inner voice. So do you have any couple of techniques that you can share, quickly with us?
Absolutely. And they're going to be a lot of what we talked about, but let's go with this kind of example here. So Mary's here. She wants to go for a walk. She knows intellectually that it's a good thing for her. She knows intellectually that when she shows up and does it, she's going to feel better. But when you do show up, you show up in the moment, and we show up with feelings, not with our intellect, right? And so her intuitive natural reaction isn't to say, it's all right, push through. Her probably a reaction is, oh, I don't know. And there's that little voice that says, we could just not go. We could just not do it. We could bundle up. So that's where we're at. So what we need to do is we need to make it into an intuitive reaction. And so the first thing I would say is we're actually going to practice every evening before we go to bed what your morning looks like. And so we're going to picture not the ideal. We're going to picture the reality. All right. That's why I say meet yourself where you are at. So you're not going to picture yourself jumping out of bed, and Mary's not going to throw her arms in the air and go, whoa, it's time for a walk on a cold morning. That's asking way too much of us. Okay. What she's going to do, she's actually going to picture that. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to feel like, ugh. And I'm going to picture myself feeling, if that's an official term for anyone, okay, feeling kind of blah. And I'm going to see myself, perhaps even she's going to see herself getting out of bed, whatever she normally does, wherever she keeps her shoes or her clothes to get ready. She's going to see herself doing that, even if it looks like dragging her feet. And she's going to see herself, despite all of that, still getting outside. So what that has done is that our brain says, okay, I know how this works. She's going to get up. We're going to feel, we're going to push through it. We're going to get the shoes. We're going to be groggy and mumbling, and we're going to get outside. And so what happens is every time that you wake up and you're feeling that way, your brain goes, it's okay. I got us. I have us. I know how this works. And it's going to carry us to the end. This is where that visualization is incredibly powerful. We're talking a couple of seconds, everyone, like 30 seconds, just walk through the reality. And that's the biggest point. Too often we visualize this ideal, and then our brain goes, well, this is not how this is looking. I don't know how we manage this. And so we simply do that. So that is one thing. Another thing we can play with, which is not fully in neuroscience, but it's an area that we talk about with clients, is habit stacking. Right? That is where we give ourselves a motivation to say, you tag on to something you normally do. So let's say you have to I don't want to do this. I was going to say feed the dog every morning. We don't want the dog to wait. But if, let's say we have to send a certain email every morning, and you go, well, I can't send that email until I've gone for my walk. And so your body and your mind is used to handling the other habit, but now you've stacked this new habit with it. And that allows the ease for you to come in and to do that more often. So that's another way that we can play with. And the other one I want to throw in there, so that Mary really pointed out, which is really helpful for us to understand. She said, I can't think about it too long or I won't go do it. Now, this is not only true for Mary, but this is true for all of our brains. It takes us about 10 seconds to decide, to make a decision, to process our information. And so if her processing information is, I think I don't want to go for a walk, and we let that whole 10 seconds go through, then she's going to end with, sounds like a good plan. But if we jump out before that 10 seconds, and this is if anyone's familiar with Mel Robbins, she talks about the 5-second rule. She has 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and gets out of bed. She did not know this, but the reason it works is because it's within that 10-second window before you start making big changes in your brain. Now, this works both ways, too. If we get frustrated with the guy on the road, we can do 10 seconds before we mutter out what we might want to mutter out. But understanding how our brain works, right? That's what we were talking about today. It's not as complicated. It's just these little tiny things go, oh, if I do that a lot, my brain will make a superhighway. Oh, if I visualize it, my brain will think that's how we normally work. Oh, if I allow 10 seconds to process it, I will or won't do the thing I want to do. Those little pieces alone are tangible, executable. They don't require supplements. They don't require an overhaul. They don't require a degree for you to move towards the life you're wanting to create for yourself.
So you're not going to have that problem in traffic because you're already on the superhighway. So we've covered that. In the first half of this conversation, based on what you said, that 20, 25 minutes is the brain's ability to focus. So this episode may have to become 2 episodes. And so we're getting towards the end. So I'm going to ask you one more question before handing it off to Mary, which is, you said a phrase earlier, stuck in your ways. A lot of people say older adults are, quote unquote, stuck in their ways. What I'm hearing from you today is they can change. Yeah. It may take work, but people can change if they want.
Absolutely. And I would even venture to say that rather than thinking stuck in our ways, we're stuck in our habits. And as soon as we decide the different habits we want and we actually move towards them, we change. We become the person we want. And it's about taking the intentionality first and foremost, which most of us were never handed, to say, who do you want to be right now? And when we start to get that picture and that clarity, then all these things that we're sharing today are simply tools to help you move to there and to use your biology, to use your brain, to hack it a little bit, to get you to where you want to go. But the first step will be, who is this new version of me? Who is this part of my life? Who am I and how do I want to show up? And then we take these tools that you guys are providing your listeners and that I'm bringing for you today to help you move into that. And so absolutely. Yeah, you're stuck in your habits and we can change our habits. Neuroplasticity says we can, and there's active, simple ways that we can change something we've always done to what we want to do now.
Well, I love that, Tanya. And actually, it's interesting you mentioned Mel Robbins. I did see her many years ago in Texas, and she did her 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she talked about, she shared her story, which was really moving.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought that up, and I haven't thought about her for a while.
Yeah.
But it was very, very, very interesting, and it was life-changing for her.
Yeah.
As you know, because it sounds like you've followed her.
It's an incredible tool. Yeah. And if anyone's not sure about it, real easy. So as soon as you find yourself in that moment going, I don't know, just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. Do not, as soon as they hit that 1, you get up. And if you can stick to that, you are actually hacking your brain. You're actually, you might be following Mel Robbins, but you're also using neuroscience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So again, as Joseph said, we're kind of getting to the bottom of the hour, so to speak, and we always ask our guests. So, Tanya, you're very successful. You can do anything at all that you want. Why do you wake up each day and do what you're doing? What's your why?
Oh, my why is for everyone to see that there is no such thing as someday in the future. We have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There is no someday. Today is the day to create the life that you want. And if it's not someday I'll travel, someday I'll do this, today is the day. And you can start walking towards that. And that is what gets me up every day, whether people are building businesses, creating lives, changing what they want, changing directions, to bring that joy and full experience of life into each day rather than some magical time in the future. So it is today.
That's amazing. Someday. No someday. Today.
No someday. It's a myth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Make it happen.
Yep.
Tanya, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we sign off, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and your work that you do?
I would love that. We have lots of resources as well and things about this neuroscience and many different facets. So please don't hesitate to reach out. As I mentioned, I am Tanya MFK. I'm the only one in the world. So it's pretty easy to find me, but you can go to my website or come see me at tanyamfk.com. If you want to send me an email, send a hello, any channels you're on, I'm there. I pay attention. We respond to everyone. So we're very accessible. So please don't hesitate to reach out or just tell us you like the show today.
And we'll definitely put all that into the show notes. So thank you, Tanya. Mary, always a pleasure. Looking forward to our next episode. Tune in next week for another, what we believe is a great episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Thanks all for listening.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.